If you haven't seen Rain Man, go see it. This movie is a classic. And even on the legal side of things, this movie really holds up. My name's Isaac Shutt. I'm your favorite wills and trust lawyer, and I love this movie. I just saw it, and I was blown away at the accurate portrayal of the legal side of things. Now, that won't be the reason that you love the movie. I just happen to be an estate planning dork. But you know what? I want to break down all of the estate planning legal issues that this movie got right, and there are a bunch. So let's dive right in.
Yeah.
Charlie, this is Lenny. I've been trying to contact you for a while. I got a long-distance call from Mr. Mooney, your father's lawyer. He's been trying to reach you. Your father has died, Charlie. Charlie?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, the funeral's tomorrow in Cincinnati. He said you'd know where. I've got his number.
That's not necessary. Anything else?
No, that's it. Listen, Charlie, if there's anything I can
All
do,
right.
just call...
Sorry about the weekend, hon.
Charlie, the weekend.
Look, I told you before, we had a falling out a long time ago. My mother died when I was 2. It was just him and me. We just didn't get along.
You're going to the funeral, no?
Yeah,
I'm coming with you.
that's really sweet, but it's really no point,
I want to, that's about it.
All right, sorry, I forgot who I was talking to.
Okay, so in this scene, Charlie finds out that his dad has died, and it seems that Charlie and his dad really weren't very close. I think what we're going to see is that that's going to have an impact on the will or trust.
Your refusal to even pretend that you loved or respected me, all these I forgive. But your failure to write, to telephone, to re-enter my life in any way has left me without a son. I wish you all I ever wanted for you. I wish you the best. I hereby bequeath to my son, Charles Sanford Babbitt, that certain Buick convertible, also outright title to my prize-winning hybrid rose bushes. May they remind him of the value of excellence and the possibility of perfection. As for my home and all other property, real and personal, these shall be placed in trust, in accordance with the terms of that certain instrument executed concurrently herewith. It means that the estate, in excess of $3 million after expenses and taxes, will go into a trust fund for a beneficiary to be named in this document.
Who is that?
No, I'm afraid I can't tell you that.
How does that work?
Forgive me, but there's nothing more I can say. I can see that you're disappointed.
I got rose bushes, didn't I? I got a used car, didn't I? What's his name? What'd you call him?
Beneficiary.
Right, beneficiary. He got $3 million, but he didn't get the rose bushes. I got the rose bushes. I definitely got the rose bushes.
Charles.
I definitely got the rose bushes. I mean, those are rose bushes.
There's no need.
And holy cats, I just love this scene. The writers and the producers just got so much right. First of all, I have to talk about how there's a reading of the will at all. Like I learned in law school, you don't do this. As an estate lawyer, you don't do a reading of the will where you invite the family to your office and say, here's the will that your father left or your grandfather left. You don't do that. And I was kind of bummed out about that because I was kind of excited for the drama that would be, but you don't do that in the real world. And here's the reason that people in my field don't recommend that attorneys do a reading of the will. Well, first of all, you are teeing things up for a, kind of a emotional response like Charlie has here. He kind of goes nuts. He's very upset. He's shocked, and that's understandable. And number two, there's this issue of conflict of interest. This attorney who's doing the reading of the will, he's the guy who wrote the will. He may become a witness in court. So the issue becomes here, if he's doing this reading of the will with Charlie, Charlie might argue that I thought this guy was representing Charlie. He was representing me. And so there would be a sort of a conflict of interest there if there was a will challenge in court. So for those reasons, attorneys don't really do readings of the will, or they shouldn't. I don't. And so don't plan on that. If you think he might be inheriting, don't plan on a reading of the will. There's this note that the dad leaves for his son, Charlie. And this definitely happens, especially when we think that a relative is going to be upset by what a will says. I'm going to put on my attorney hat for a minute, and I'm helping a client do a will and things like that. And let's say that client is going to leave sort of a lopsided share, like maybe he's going to cut out a kid or not give a kid very much of his estate. And you would think, well, Isaac, if that's not a legal document, if that note doesn't really do anything, then what's the point? Well, it's huge. It may not itself be a legal document, but let's just say Charlie lawyered up and went to court, and people definitely do that. I mean, greed comes into play. Charlie feels entitled. Let's say he lawyers up after dad dies and tries to contest dad's will. Well, this note is a huge piece of evidence. So not only does it sort of explain things to Charlie on a sentimental perspective, but it could become a key piece of evidence. I mean, without that note, Charlie would be free to argue that the will is legally invalid because his dad didn't know what he was signing, or that he was mistaken as to the contents of his will, or that he was mentally incapacitated, or that the attorney had just messed up or made a scrivener's error when he wrote the will, and that wasn't really what the dad intended. Well, all those legal arguments, they're valid until you have this note. With this note, a judge or jury is going to be like, yeah, right, I can see what the guy intended. He explained it. And so I think that has a sentimental impact, but also a really awesome legal impact. Oh, and I know I'm spending a lot of time on this scene, but look, the writers or producers or directors, they all got a lot right in this scene. I mean, all the way down to a really silly detail. And there's this special blue paper that is stapled across the top, and it's kind of like a dust jacket for the wills. Yeah, bluebacks. I don't do them anymore, but it's just like they really got a lot of details right in this movie. And then on the more technical aspects of this will, man, is that dialed in. The gift of the rose bushes and the gift of the vehicle, we call those specific bequests. And I describe them as off-the-top gifts. So you have your off-the-top specific bequests, which are like specific items, and then you have the pot, which is called the residue of the estate. So in this scene, we see the will's attorney describe for Charlie that Charlie is only getting specific bequests of the rosebush and the vehicle, but he's not getting any of the residue of the estate. The residue of the estate is going into a trust, which technically we would call a testamentary trust, because it's a trust that was established in a last will and testament. And so from that document, Charlie doesn't learn who the trustee is or who the beneficiary is. He just knows that he's not the beneficiary of that trust. And so stay tuned for this next clip.
Susanna, this could take a few minutes.
Oh, can I help you?
Yes, I think you can. I have a problem with a private trust. That is terrific soup.
Thank you.
My father was Sanford Madden.
Okay, so in this scene, Charlie goes to the bank and he tries to sweet talk the bank teller. And this is so true to real life. This happens all the time. But in this day and age, it rarely works. Nowadays, bank employees literally do what their computer screen tells them.
I'm Ron Burgundy?
Who typed a question mark on the teleprompter?
Feels like bankers in this day and age are trained not to think. So if somebody comes in and says, hi, my name's Charlie, my dad died, give me a bunch of info about a bank account, I don't care if you compliment their sweater vest, you're probably not going to get much info about that deceased person's account, because the computer screen will tell that bank employee that you need to have certain legal documentation before they can discuss that account with you. So I think that might have worked back when this movie was filmed, but that's probably not going to work this day and age. Man, kudos to you if you can sweet talk a bank teller this day and age into giving you any information about a deceased person's account, unless you are a named beneficiary on that account or you are a joint owner on that account. Otherwise, I good luck getting account information of a deceased person until you have court paperwork authorizing you to get access to that information and access to that account. All right, let's check out the next clip.
Whatever this is, I don't understand the point of secrecy. I mean, this patient is an old girlfriend of my father's.
Mr. Babbitt, I knew your father since you were 2 years old.
The year my mother died.
Look, I'm trustee of the fund, but this hospital receives nothing from that.
That hardly seems fair. Maybe that's something that we could discuss.
I took on this burden out of loyalty to your father. That's where my loyalty ends.
And you think I should feel a little of that loyalty?
I think you feel cheated out of your birthright by a man who had difficulty showing love. And I think if I were in your shoes, I'd probably feel the same.
Now, I was hoping that we could talk, that you would explain my father's side of it, help me understand the right and what he's done, because failing that, I have responsibilities of my own, and they have to be met, even if that means a fight.
Again, I am so impressed with this scene. So Bruner is the trustee of the trust established by Charlie's dad, and terminology-wise, you should know there are 3 roles in every trust, okay? So just get with me here. You've got the trustee, who is sort of the manager of the assets. In this case, that's Bruner. And so Bruner owes all these legal responsibilities to the other role, which is the beneficiary of the trust. So you've got the trustee who's basically managing the assets for the benefit of the beneficiary. Now, the third and final role was Charlie's dad, and that would be the settlor or grantor or trustor of the trust. That all means the same thing. And so that was the guy who initially established the trust. So, well, you just got estate planning 101 there. The roles of a trust are beneficiary, trustee, and settlor.
All right, degrees, etc.
Very impressed.
So in this case, Bruner is the trustee, and so he owes all these legal duties to the beneficiary, and he just knocks it out of the park in this scene. I mean, really knocks it out of the park. He's just spot on. Here, the trustee should not tell Charlie a darn thing, and he doesn't, because Charlie's not a beneficiary. So the trustee does not owe Charlie any information because he doesn't owe him any duties. Only duties are owed to follow what the trust document says and to do what's in the best interest of the beneficiary. And that's not Charlie here. So the trustee is being quiet, which is exactly what he should do. But he's also managing this situation with empathy. He's being a professional. If you want to get to like crazy little details of this movie, did you notice Bruner literally has in the background a book titled Empathy? I mean, like, this movie is just insane with how accurate it is. Bruner is just killing it as the trustee of this trust. All right, let's check out the next clip.
I'm sorry, this is not your car. It's my boyfriend's.
Yeah, my dad lets me drive slow on the driveway. I'm an excellent driver.
But are you sure that you drive this car?
There's only 28 miles on the odometer since I drove it a week ago last Saturday. Should be more than 28 miles.
You know this car?
I definitely know this car. It's 1949 Buick Roadmaster, straight 8, Fireball 8. Only 8,095 production models. Dad lets me drive slow on the driveway, but not on Monday. Definitely not on Monday.
Who's your dad?
Sanford Babbitt.
Who? Sanford Babbitt?
10961 Beechcrest Street, Cincinnati, Ohio.
That's my address. I mean, what is it with this guy? Hey, who's your mother?
Eleanor Babbitt.
Eleanor?
Died January 5th, 1965 after a short
Who the hell are you?
Uh-oh.
Huh? Hold, wait a second. Where are you going?
13 minutes to Judge Wapner, the
Wapner?
People's Court.
Hold it, wait a second here. I want to ask you a question.
But you're witnessing a real. Participants are not actors.
Hey, I'm talking to you.
Litigants with the case pending California.
Bruner.
Court.
Who is this guy?
Raymond is your brother.
Now the dispute settled here on forum. People's Court.
My brother? I don't have a brother.
Poor Charlie. First of all, he finds out that his dad has died. Then he finds out that his dad basically cut him out of the will. I mean, he did get the rose bushes, but not much else. And now he gets the shock that he's got this brother out there. Having this sort of concealed relative is pretty rare. Like I've appealed over 1,000 estate cases, and that kind of thing doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. I think the shock here and Tom Cruise's portrayal of that shock is really spot on, because a lot of times what we see when somebody finds out that they have a relative they never knew about is sort of denial, and then they kind of get a little defensive because they're expecting a certain inheritance. And here you see that portrayed by Tom Cruise to a T. All right, let's check out the next clip.
Stu. Legally, Bruner never established a conservatorship of Raymond?
Oh, he didn't figure anyone would show up to contest his authority.
Well, if that's the case, I definitely will get custody and the $3 million, right?
And you set up a date. Yeah, you set up a date for the custody hearing. Stu, I want a firm date and I want it early.
So let me break this down. Charlie is trying to become conservator or a legally appointed caretaker for his brother, and I think he's doing that in the hopes that he'll get an inheritance. By basically getting control of his brother, he might get control of his brother's money. But that would probably never work. The courts are going to make a distinction between a guardian or conservator of the person and guardian or conservator of the estate or assets. So in this case, even if a judge appointed Tom Cruise's character as guardian of the person or conservator of the person, he's not going to do anything to get Charlie money. I mean, at most, he'll get reimbursed probably for serving in that capacity if he had like out-of-pocket medical or food or clothing expenses for his brother. Yeah, the guy who's controlling the money may be obligated to reimburse him, but it's not like by getting appointed that Charlie would get some financial windfall. So I know Charlie is grasping at straws here to try to get this big lump sum, but I don't think that's the path to get it.
Tomorrow morning you'll meet Dr. Marston, who's in charge of Raymond's psychiatric evaluation.
Yeah, I know.
I gave him boxes of files on Raymond. Boxes.
Well, good luck.
Look, this isn't a close call, son. It's a formality. Your brother's a very disabled individual.
Are you trying to tell me the Marston's going to rule against me? Is that why you called me up here?
No, I'm telling you, it's always been a lost cause, Charlie.
Okay, what is this about? Why'd you call me?
Well, let me tell you something. Your father put me in charge of all the money, all right?
Yeah?
And it doesn't matter whether or not you're in custody of Raymond. I won't have to pay you a dime. It's at my discretion, not the court's.
What, so you can't lose?
I can lose. I can lose Raymond. And I happen to care about your brother's life and the treatment he receives. I made a commitment to your father some 20 years ago, and I'm not willing to gamble with that.
What is this?
It's a very big check.
$250,000.
And no strings attached. Just walk away, Charlie. You know, this isn't about you and me. It's not about winning or losing.
You know, I asked you a week ago, why didn't anyone ever tell me I had a brother? You didn't have an answer. I don't know. It's funny, I just realized I'm not pissed off anymore. My father cut me out of his will.
Okay, so in this scene, we learn that Charlie has decided to move forward with his, evil plan to try to get appointed as the conservator or caretaker of his brother. And Bruner, the trustee, is saying, look, man, you don't have a shot. The judge is probably not going to rule in your favor. I mean, this brother, this incapacitated guy, has been living in our facility for years. So we have all these records, and you're going to lose your buns in court. So, you probably ought to go away. But the really interesting thing about this scene to me is that there's this $250,000 offer from Bruner to Charlie. And you might think that, that would never really happen in the real world. I mean, he's basically bribing Charlie. But yeah, it totally happens in the real world. And frankly, it should happen. Because here's the deal. That trust that Bruner is in charge of as trustee, it probably gives him a lot of discretion. You might think that that's insane and that would never happen in the real world, but no. Disputes like this totally get resolved in settlement. I wouldn't think of it as a bribe. I would think of this as a really smart maneuver to do what's in the beneficiary's best interest. So he's kind of come up with a creative solution here. Let's see what happens in this next clip.
Now, I don't know any easy way to say this, Mr. Babbitt. But
Say what? What? Have I lost already?
No, you haven't lost. I'm not the judge and jury. I'm just a doctor making a recommendation to a court. Now, I must tell you that Dr. Bruner is a very respected professional. Raymond's case has been meticulously documented over the years, and of course, Walbrook is one of the finest institutions we have in this country.
Well, you guys have already made up your mind. I'll see you in court, huh?
Hold on, son. No one's your enemy
My brother
here.
came further with me in a week than he did with you in 20 years, and that's the truth.
I don't think it's necessary
You
to
don't know
challenge.
anything about us.
I don't think it's necessary to challenge Dr. Bruner.
I'm sorry.
All right?
I love this scene, again, this is like so true to real world. So, you've got this pending conservatorship case where Charlie is asking to be appointed by a judge to be basically the court-appointed caretaker for his brother. But in most states, you are legally required to have a neutral, independent doctor weigh in with a report for the judge. Because, the judge doesn't know the incapacitated person, and the judge isn't a doctor. And so they're going to weigh a report by a doctor to say, yeah, it really is necessary for this guy to have a legal guardian. Because, by the way, a guardian or conservatorship is a big deal. You're losing your rights. So this incapacitated guy may lose his right to choose where he lives, to pick his own doctors and medicines, to choose his marital status. He may lose his right to drive, his right to vote. So a lot of these constitutional rights could be stripped from him if the judge grants a conservatorship or a guardianship. That's why most states' laws say you got to have a neutral doctor that has no horse in the race whatsoever report into the judge about whether or not the stripping of that rights truly would be in the best interest of the alleged incapacitated person. So the accuracy of this scene, to me, yeah, it's a movie, but I think it's got a lot right.
Now, exactly what happened this past week, Raymond?
Well, we got to know each other.
I was asking Raymond. Brother took you to Las Vegas?
$3,000 in Wheel of Fortune.
Gave you $3,000 to gamble with?
Lost $3,000 and
What else did you do?
dance with Charlie Babbitt.
Dance with your brother?
You want to learn how to dance, so I taught
Dance
him
in the
how to
elevator
dance.
with Susanna. Kissed Susanna.
How did it feel?
Felt wet.
Wet?
Yeah.
Quite a trip, huh?
Yeah.
You drove?
Yeah.
Brother let you drive on the highway, the interstate?
Yeah, slow on the driveway.
He didn't drive on the highway.
Did he have any emotional outbursts this past week?
What do you mean?
Well, the things they tend to do, and...
Okay, he had what you call an outburst at the airport because he didn't want to fly. So we didn't fly.
And when was the last outburst that he had?
This morning,
This morning?
He got a little nervous, but he's fine.
Well, no, don't feel as I'm placing any blame.
When we went out for pancakes.
All right, look, I don't think you have to be defensive about it. I'm not challenging you.
I'm just being honest with you.
I think you're missing the point.
No, I think you're missing the point. I'm being truthful about this.
The point I was trying to make is I'm not placing any blame. I'm not saying
I
it's
had
your
a father
fault.
I hardly knew, a mother I didn't know at all. I found out a few days ago that I have a brother and I want to be with him, and I'm supposed to give him up?
Look, you cannot take on the responsibility of your brother without professional guidance.
That's your opinion, Dr. Bruner.
Yes, it's my opinion.
There's a couple things I'd like to go over in this file. Dr. Bruner states a week ago you stole Raymond out of the institution and you're willing to trade him for $1.5 million. Is that correct?
My father died. I was upset. Okay? That was wrong.
So last week you were upset, and then this week you suddenly found some devotion to your brother and you want to take care of him for the rest of your life.
Yes.
So in the beginning it was like a kidnapping.
Kidnapping, that's very strong. I didn't kidnap my brother.
But in the course of the week you came to have an understanding with him.
Yes. I understand that this sounds irrational to you. Yes, when it started out, it had that...
Don't feel compelled
that
to be defensive about that.
Can I talk?
Yes, you can.
I'd like to talk.
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
There's no accusations.
There's a nuance in this scene that the doctor is trying to get across to Charlie, that this interview is not about Charlie. You get the sense from Tom Cruise that he feels a little guilty. He's a little defensive about his actions, but the doctor keeps saying, hey, whoa, I'm not the judge, and all that kind of stuff. And again, that's true to the real world. What the judge is going to look at is what is in the best interest of the alleged incapacitated person. I don't care about you, Charlie. This case is not about you. It's about your incapacitated brother, Raymond, and what is best for Raymond. And so that's what the doctor keeps trying to do, is focus on what is best for Raymond, not Charlie.
But I think the purpose of this meeting is to determine what is best for Raymond, whether or not he's capable of functioning in the community and what in fact he wants, if that's possible to determine. Why don't we ask Raymond, maybe we can find a few answers. Do you want to stay with your brother, Charlie? Raymond, do you want to stay with your brother, Charlie?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
You want to stay with your brother?
Yeah. Yeah, stay with my brother, Charlie Babbitt.
That's what you want?
Yeah.
Can I ask you something else, Raymond?
Yeah.
You want to go back to Walbrook?
Yeah.
Raymond, can you make a distinction between your brother and Walbrook?
Yeah.
Raymond, do you want to stay with your brother Charlie here in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Or do you want to go back to Walbrook?
Yeah.
Two separate things.
Yeah,
Stay with
okay.
your brother
Stay
or
with
go
my
back to
brother,
Walbrook?
Go back to Walbrook.
It's not one thing,
Stay
Raymond.
back at Walbrook. Stay
This
back
is your
at
brother.
Walbrook.
You make
Yeah.
a choice
Yeah,
one
go
or
back
the
to
other?
Walbrook. Stay with Charlie Babb.
The doctor asks Raymond what he wants. And that's going to happen in most cases like this, where maybe the incapacitated person is verbal and can kind of talk about their preferences. And in this case, Raymond says that he wants Charlie to be his guardian. And I thought, oh my gosh, that would really change things. But then he goes on to say, well, he also wants to go back to Walbrook. And ultimately, we don't see what the doctor's report here is. But my guess is this doctor's report will say that, yeah, the guy is incapacitated, but we don't need to take away all of his rights from him because he can go back to Walbrook where he was, where he'd been living for a long time and where all of his needs have been being met. And so the court doesn't need to strip all of his rights from him because there is a less restrictive legal alternative by having him move back to Walbrook. So let's check out this next clip.
Major point, okay? You don't have to humiliate him.
Stay back.
Ray, it's okay. It's over.
Yeah. Stay back at Walbrook with Charlie Babbitt. Stay back at Walbrook.
It's over.
Raymond?
Yeah.
Dr. Bruner, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course. Excuse me.
If you couldn't tell, if I was going to give this movie an accuracy rating in terms of like wills, trusts, and guardianship, which is like my area of law, that's my sandbox, I would give this movie an A. And I never thought of this movie as an estate planning movie, but it totally is. And it gets a lot right. I think the lesson that you can learn here is that you don't have to give your kids an inheritance. If you don't have a will or a trust, then the government has one for you. But in this case, this wealthy gentleman wrote down his preferences. And not only did he have the legal documents, but he also backed it up with a handwritten note to explain why he did what he did, which helps from a sentimental perspective, but could also help in a courtroom if this disgruntled beneficiary tried to move forward with a will contest in court. Also, we learned about the two types of gifts in a will. You've got your residue gifts, which is the pot, so to speak, and then you've got your specific bequests, which in this case was the vintage automobile and the rose bushes. And then we also learned about this trust that was established in the will and the three trust roles, being the settlor, that's the guy who created the will. We've got the trustee, that's the guy who manages assets. And then we got the beneficiary. In this case, that's the incapacitated guy, Raymond. Also, you can learn about conservatorship or guardianship from this movie because Charlie is applying to become the court-appointed guardian or conservator for his brother Raymond. But that was not likely to get him access to assets because he probably only would have been appointed, if anything, as guardian of the person, which means just take care of his physical needs. And that's a court process. It's not automatic. And so a judge is going to look at things like an independent doctor's report. And in order to do that doctor's report, most of the time we're going to see an interview with relatives of the alleged incapacitated person, and then also oftentimes an interview with the alleged incapacitated person himself, just like we saw in this movie. Let me just wrap up by saying this. I just love this movie for its accuracy. I give it an A. I mean, not even with reservation. I just straight up give it an A. And I understand that Charlie didn't like how his father gave away his fortune to Raymond, who Charlie didn't even know exists until after his dad died. But that was the dad's right. And you have that right too. You can give your assets, your hard-earned assets, to whomever you want. You don't have to give it straight up to your biological children in equal shares. You can do what you want. And that's what this movie shows, and shows really well. Don't be like most Americans, because most Americans don't even have a last will and testament, much less a trust. Have a will or a trust so you get to say where your hard-earned assets go after you pass away instead of some politician deciding.